Okay, thank you for joining us this evening, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to give a few housekeeping tips. The audience has now been placed on mute. We have begun the recording, and if you have questions, please enter them in the IM box located in the left-hand bottom corner, and I will share them with our presenter, Reed Whittier. We will be sending a recording after the webinar is complete, so let's get started.
Hi, everyone. As Jasmine mentioned, my name is Reed Whittier. I'm actually the Chief Technology Officer here at New Signature. And today, we're here to talk about Dynamics Marketing and the opportunity that represents for your business. This is a session in which we're going to go over a PowerPoint deck, and then we're going to have a demo, and then we're going to open it up for questions so that you guys can ask follow-up questions after the presentation. I encourage you to throw some of those questions in the IM window as we're going. If it's something that relates to a particular slide or demonstration feature that I'm showing at the time, Jasmine will interrupt me and we'll try and answer it there. Otherwise, certainly you can ask questions at the end as well, and we will move from there. So with that, let's get going. So as we all know, the world is changing and changing rapidly. And one of the big ways in which it's changing most is the rise of social media. Now, when you look at these numbers, they seem almost absurd how large they are. All of us know that the world is social and mobile and that everyone is connected together. We see it in our personal lives every day. If you're using Facebook, if you're using Twitter, if you're using LinkedIn, if you look at this, 150 is the average, not the top, the average number of times a person looks at their phone. That's a lot of phone checking, and that phone channel is not just audio, it's not just video these days. It's extending to all of those social brands and social networks that we connect to. It goes beyond SMS. It goes beyond what we think of as a phone to really the same ways that we're connecting on our computers at work and our tablets on the commute. What's important to note is that those social services help all of us and our customers connect with businesses and brands that we feel loyal to. We're all a nation of different tribes. We all want to root for particular companies or brands that we support. It's important to note that all of those conversations are the same sorts of conversations that used to happen offline. They'd be conversations that would happen around the water cooler or at the barber shop. Instead, those conversations are now happening online, and that's a big change. The reason it's important is that before, when it was offline, there was no way as a marketing professional that you would be able to get access to that information. Businesses can now have a golden opportunity to reach out to their prospective customers to make sure that they're getting the message that they want to get out. The second component of that is the reverse. All of our customers out there are increasingly intelligent about the options in a way that they simply weren't before. In the past, a salesperson would go out and they would present their side of the story, and that might be the only side of the story that a customer might hear. Today, customers are realistically looking for products and services well before they reach out to you or your sales team. On average, by the time a customer reaches out to your organization, they're already 60% of the way through the buying process. That leads to some challenges, and the role of marketing is critical in those challenges. Now that everyone out there is doing that research in advance and using those sources of information, whether they're websites or social networks or you name it, those people are being able to get those answers that they need. What are the types of competitors that are out there? What are the price points that are in the market? What's the value proposition that all of those customers are trying to look for? And when you think about this, as recently as 5 or 10 or certainly 15 years ago, in a world of digital marketing and pay-per-click ads, it really has shifted for most marketing executives. Now, instead of being told, here's the budget, go out there and win us some business, the real question is return on investment. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to spend $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 or $500,000 on a marketing campaign, all of the financial individuals at your organization are saying, well, that's great that you're spending this money, but what's the return on that investment? If you're going to spend $500,000, we need to be making more than $500,000 to justify it. Even if you're spending something as low as $10,000 or $20,000, we need to be able to justify the results of that marketing campaign. And now that items are digital, the old days of trust me, I know what I'm doing, we need to put out some print ads or some radio ads, which, to be honest, there were fairly poor metrics for how those ads were landing in the past. If you put an ad in print media, it might be difficult to justify that return on investment. You really just had to go with a trust of your marketing head that it was going to work. Now, the bigger problem with all of this for many marketing leaders is that there's an increasing complexity in the environment. If you're talking about radio and print, that's a very small amount of channels to look for. You expand to television, okay, 3 channels. But in today's world of social networks, of advertisement through websites, of channels that involve real-time responses, things like Twitter, for instance, where not only is it a different medium to communicate on, but the expectation is that communication response time is going to be less than a few minutes. Or it's difficult with all of that complexity to have one solution to manage all of that. And what a lot of marketers do is they implement multiple solutions. You'll have one solution that tests how your advertising is working. You'll have another solution that might test the actual results of your social media marketing. Maybe you're doing some polling to tell whether your nurture campaigns are working. And the problem with all of those point solutions is they never really agree on the truth. Each of them has a different view of the marketing landscape. And that means if you're a chief marketing officer, as you can see, 50% of the CMOs admit they're unprepared for this change. They've come of age in an earlier time where you had that level of trust, and now they're being asked to produce raw numbers and metrics to justify their environment. Because of that complexity, that customer experience is significantly different as well. So when you think about how your customers interact with your organization, they have a number of different ways to actually reach out and touch you. The difficulty in the current environment is because there are so many different channels that they can reach out to you. It's very difficult to present a unified experience to your customers. And if you're not presenting a unified experience, it's equally difficult to measure that impact. We covered this a little on the previous slide, but if you've got a number of different point solutions, it's very difficult to extrapolate from all of those to specific customers and say, customer X has a positive brand sentiment with us, or customer Y is experiencing a challenge, and here's how we're going to go out there and make them happier. And the reason for that is that your email marketing campaign, if divorced from your web campaign, if divorced from your nurture and your content campaign, if all of those are separate, discrete solutions that are going out there, as a customer, you may have a very different opinion of that organization. If I receive 20 emails per week from a particular company, I'm going to naturally say that I don't like that information, that's too much email coming to me as an individual. Whereas if I consume them by going to their website once in a while, or I follow them on Twitter, I might have a better experience. And so being able to tie all of these systems together is important. And that inconsistency in and of itself is something that presents challenges for customers, because when you see, let's say again, 20 emails per week, you assume that the marketing team behind that is on top of their game, and that if I send a tweet to them, that they're going to respond to them. If I send a Facebook message to them, that they're going to respond on their Facebook page. And if I don't see that activity, if I notice that they have time to send 3 emails per day, but they're not responding to Twitter in real time, let alone on an hourly or daily fashion, that will prove to be an inconsistent customer experience. And that's what drives customers crazy. In their minds, it's 2014. We need to be able to manage all of these systems. Each time that a customer calls into your environment and is transferred between different people from a customer service aspect, that's seen as a drop if they have to tell the information twice. Well, that was 5-10 years ago that most companies got savvy about making sure that when people were calling into their organizations, they were having one view of the customer. That extends now to the web. It extends to Facebook. It extends to Twitter. It extends to all of those different areas that people are coming in and interacting with your organization. They expect that you will be on top of your game and can be able to align their experience across platforms and systems. They don't know that you're running multiple different systems for all of these. In their mind, there's one person who's in charge of it all. So how do you solve for this complexity? How do you keep customers engaged and having a great customer experience and still have the ability to measure the impact of every investment that you make? The trick really is to market smarter. So what does this mean? It means you need to engage customers in a consistent way across multiple channels to create amazing customer experiences. And I can certainly say, having worked at New Signature for many years, that this has always been our model. This is why we were named Microsoft's US Partner of the Year this year, is that Microsoft and New Signature are both 100% committed to creating amazing customer experiences. And they are committed because they know that you at your organization have the same commitment to your customers. That delight is what means that your business is going to be successful. If you have amazing customer experiences, if you align marketing and sales, you're going to have a better pipeline. If you're tracking your marketing return on investment, you're going to be able to demonstrate impact. That's the holy grail for most organizations, is to make sure that you're aligning your brand expertise, which may be something that you spent years doing, with the customer experience. If you're pushing that customer service is a top concern of yours on your website and in your advertisements and media, you need to be able to actually execute on that. And that means engaging with customers in the way that they want, at the time that they want, with the specific content they need in order to convert them to a paid customer. You know, it means using multiple channels. Some customers may want to communicate over Twitter. Some customers may want to communicate over email. Some customers may want to communicate in person. Those different channels, if you can target it, each one, you'll be able to actually demonstrate that impact in an actual conversion process. From a metrics perspective, you need to be able to, nuts and bolts style, increase the number of qualified leads you have. You need to increase your conversion rates. You need to decrease your time to market, and you need to prove the return on your marketing investment, and that you can't demonstrate, you can't underestimate that, because you really want to go back to the CFO. You want to go back to the chief sales officer and say, look, this is what my marketing is able to do. Now, with Dynamics Marketing, customers using it have been able to see a 60% increase in conversion rates.
You will now be placed into conference.
They've been able to see a 25% higher return.
To unmute, press #6.
So when you look at the customers in your environment, Dynamics Marketing is what is going to light that up. Now, how is it going to do that? We mentioned that we're going to cover some of the benefits and features in a minute, but I do want to explain how these specific goals work so that when you see them in action, you understand exactly why Microsoft built this product. From an engagement of customers, that means being able to use prospects, to connect prospects with targeted content. It's going to be across multiple channels, and it's going to be across multiple stages in a campaign. You might start with an email campaign that might branch out into social media, that might transition into sending content to specific customers or phone calls going into those organizations. However you've set up that campaign, at each stage, when you see things working and not working, you can adjust on the fly. And that's a critical advantage of using Dynamics Marketing, is the ability to pivot and to say, hey, look, I know that we reached out via these different mechanisms, but this isn't working, or this other method is working more effectively, so let's put more of our dollars in another way. So it's not just simply building the multi-stage campaign, it's executing in a consistent and able to adjust manner. From a pipeline perspective, marketing obviously helps build a strong sales pipeline. But the biggest complaint sales always has is that the leads aren't qualified and that they're not actually measuring up to their standards. And that's been the frustration from a sales perspective for time immemorial. Every seller says, I could sell much more effectively if marketing would just give me some good leads. With Dynamics Marketing, you can actually go in and score leads in a repeatable manner to be able to provide that value to your organization. Beyond that lead scoring, you can also demonstrate impact from the raw numbers and budgeting. Everyone knows you have different channels and tactics. It will always be more difficult in many ways, especially for organizations with more limited budgets, to get a return on investment from certain non-digital mechanisms. If you're using direct mail, for instance, it's incredibly difficult to get return on investment from that because ultimately customers have an ability to consume and you just have to trust that they're going to indicate that that direct mail campaign actually worked. And certainly many marketing organizations have seen over the past years that the efficacy of certain channels, whether it be advertising or marketing, has actually decreased significantly. Regardless of the cost, consumers are much more savvy. They'd much rather engage in a digital way than receive some sort of print media or consume an advertisement at a bus stop or a metro stop. And because of that, because customers tend to prefer the digital connection, it actually reinforces the idea that if you're using these mechanisms, it'll also be easier to measure those revenue results across all of those investments. So how are we going to do this? Let's start going into it. So from an engagement perspective, from a personalization perspective, if you're using Dynamics Marketing, you can track both explicit, what they say, and implicit behavior, what they do, to tailor your message and drive some conversions. That automation and that monitoring of the channels allows you to adjust on the fly, not only to what customers could do, but how you've laid it out from a timing perspective. So in the past, organizations have found it challenging to make sure that their programs and campaigns line up in a repeatable manner. If at the first of the month you always send out a newsletter to your entire marketing list, that's a great way to ensure that customers are consuming it, but you want to track the results of that. You want to see who's opening it. You want to see if you're driving them to a new landing page, how many are converting, and you want to actually adjust the response to how they want to consume that. Some customers might need a callback. Other customers may say, I don't prefer to receive a callback. I just like to get perhaps a white paper or another bit of information. And so making sure that you're presenting that right content to the right customer drives up adoption and drives up loyalty. And that's ultimately something that many of us have seen in our own lives as we've been marketed to by many organizations. I've lost track of the time that a company or a brand that I support and that I like has overwhelmed me with email. And I've thought to myself, I still want to support this customer. I still want to support this brand or this particular company, but I don't wish to receive 10 emails every month about the same thing over and over again. And if they could just make the content more relevant to me, if they could reach out to me when something truly is novel that I want to see, I would be much more aligned with that customer. And that's what you want to do with these personalized campaigns. You want to make sure that when you're sharing those lists between sales and marketing, that helps generate more better leads. You don't just want to be spamming your sales team with lots of leads. You want to make sure that they're qualified and that they're from engaged customers of yours. Now, from a planning perspective, this has been a constant thorn in the side of many of us who have worked with marketing departments over the years. You want to be able to track every single customer interaction. Every seller, every marketer, every customer service rep at your organization should be able to look at a single customer and see how many emails have gone to that customer, how many phone calls have gone to that customer, how often have they called back into your organization to ask for service and support for the types of services that you're selling to them. If you're tracking every single customer interaction, that's gold from a marketing perspective because you can tell when they're happy, when they're not. You can tell when you've inundated them with content and when you've been more lightweight. If you're not tracking every customer interaction, you run the risk that your sales team might call into that particular account and might be told, we're not interested in your product simply because you didn't actually communicate with them on their terms. In terms of going through and actually building the project from an execution standpoint, if you can't build out a campaign and know here's what the campaign is going to look like, not only this week, but 3 weeks into the future and 6 weeks into the future. And we recognize, Microsoft recognizes that that's going to change. You need to be able to have triggers that say if a customer is excited by this prospect, go down this route. Or if the customer doesn't feel that it's meeting his or her needs, go down a different route. And so with Dynamics Marketing, you can actually use those triggers to create great nurture campaigns and build up the trust in your organization. Finally, if you're not measuring it, it doesn't count. And being able to use one system to manage the budgets, to collaborate with your entire team and multiple agencies, and to manage the content ensures that you're always going to have a consistent, thoughtful experience. You're not going to have to hop between 5 or 10 different point systems to be able to manage these marketing campaigns. You can do it all from one tool. So from a sales perspective, I mentioned this before, but the typical sales complaint is that there aren't enough leads, or the leads aren't enough high quality. And if the leads aren't high quality leads, your sellers are not being served well. Being able to make sure that you can convert those sales lists that the sales team provides to the marketing team into quality leads is what Dynamics Marketing is able to do by combining the sales and marketing funnels. Instead of having two disparate systems, you can have one single system that sellers will provide lists to the marketing team, that will turn into leads that will be scored automatically, and those quality leads will be sent back to the sales team to make sure that the sellers are being served well. In that process, there will be a number of activities. Those activities could be email, they could be phone calls, you name it, what those activities are. But the marketing team will be able to look at those activities and see which ones are returning a good investment. And based on that, they can actually increase the quality to the sales team. And that's something that I think most sales teams have always wanted the ability to do, is to say, okay, I want greater leads, and here's what I'm willing to pay. Here's the financial cost of what I would be willing to do from an investment perspective to ensure that I'm getting better leads. Every seller knows that they've got a limited amount of time to go through their accounts and go through their potential leads. By putting a price figure on how effective those different marketing items are, it's very easy to say whether you want to shift up or down or to engage additional channels and communicate that back to the sales team. And finally, the ability to connect CRM to Dynamics Marketing allows you to have a fully rich integrated environment. That's something that you're not going to have to make exports or do bulk updates or the like. Instead, in real time, when you're building leads and contacts on each side of the system, they will be able to work together seamlessly. Because you're able to connect on a number of different channels and a number of different marketing areas and a number of different programs, and you're using a single system to do that, it's going to be a consistent, thoughtful experience to your customers. Think about past marketing campaigns that you've run. Perhaps you started with a blast email. Maybe you followed that up with some direct mail or some advertisements on TV or radio. When you think about how that consistency has worked in the past, if you're using different systems to build those different programs, it can be very challenging to map out what the next 6 months, let alone the next year, may look like from a marketing perspective. I would be willing to say that there's not a single marketer that hasn't felt overwhelmed by the sheer number of channels and messages that they're managing across their teams. You may have 3, 4, 10, 20 different programs running at any given moment from a marketing perspective. And having to juggle all of those simultaneously on multiple point systems is just too much for most marketers to actually be able to wrap their hands around. Instead, it's normally maybe a 1 to 3 month horizon, and they're just trying to wrap their hands around the current campaign rather than being able to see holistically all of the campaigns that they have in the market in a given moment. Ultimately, that means that customers are ill-served, because if your customers aren't able to see that information and see a single unified, consistent message, it's going to be difficult for them to believe that you're running things as an organization properly. So from a reporting perspective, I think this is the final result for most marketers. You obviously want to make sure that you're getting your dollars spent in a useful way. And unless you have intuitive reports to show you where are you spending your money, where are you generating leads, where are you seeing that return on your investment, whether it's across specific marketing campaigns or even specific activities, you need to be able to work to be able to provide that intuitive knowledge of what campaigns are landing well, and you need to be able to do it in real time. You don't want to be able to have to wait a week or 2 weeks after a campaign has gone out to be able to adjust the messaging to make sure that it lands correctly. You're trying to measure your return on marketing investment. You want to be able to get that information in real time. And with tools like Power BI, you can actually integrate those analytics directly into Excel to be able to get rich information and to surface it to your stakeholders in a way that doesn't require you to make huge investments in very specific proprietary software technology. So let's dive into the key capabilities of the solution so that you guys can see what Dynamics Marketing is capable of doing. So one of the first things that I show customers when we start to explore Dynamics Marketing is the new integrated visual campaign designer. The goal here is to make sure that the UI of the process is easy and intuitive and something that anyone can pick up and begin to use. In this example, we built out an event registration page that then leads to a particular trigger. That trigger is, did the person register or not? And when you think about that sort of simplistic, hey, we sent out an event, we want to make sure people are registered, being able to build out that automation of a confirmation once they've registered or a reminder, hey, you didn't actually register for a new conference that's coming up. In the past, being able to juggle that without a system is almost impossible. And juggling that with multiple campaigns in the market can be even more challenging for a very stressed marketing team. I've lost track of the number of times in the past that I've been to an event and I've asked someone, hey, can we get the latest registration list? And what did we do with the people that we didn't respond to our initial registration? And ideally the answer is, well, we waited a week because we didn't want to harass them, and then we sent them a reminder email. And that simple scenario is something that is incredibly easy to do through Dynamics Marketing. By setting up those automated campaigns all at the same time, it also ensures, because you can put in time delays into the system, it ensures that you can bake out a campaign from start to finish and kick it off and just have that campaign run automatically. So rather than the current environment at many organizations where everyone is doing things based on particular times, you might say, we're going to send out our event registration this week. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to scramble and try and send out a reminder email. And then in 3 weeks, we're going to go out and send a confirmation email and provide some more information. Instead of having that initial date, 2 weeks and 3 weeks motion, which inevitably means that you're always scrambling because every week there's another campaign that you need to work on, you can actually build out these campaigns all in advance. So during a particular week, you could go through, get all the materials in order, make sure that everything is aligned and looking the way that you would want it to, and kick off the campaign. And it will start running. And automatically, when it hits those time thresholds, it'll begin to adjust accordingly based on the campaign that you built. The best part for me is that because that process is happening automatically, you can always go in and make changes to the underlying components within it. If your marketing brand alignment changes halfway through a campaign, you can go in and change the email template that it's pulling from, and it will just happen automatically to send the new one. Making sure that you can do that ensures that you can actually build these campaigns based on your budget at a very specific time within the organization rather than having to do it in real time. And that's what I think of when I think of course corrections, is being able to say, this is working well, this is not working well, let's adjust it to meet that. Because that engagement process is keeping track of the customer itself through the entire environment, every time that an email goes out or a phone call is made or someone registers on a site, you'll be able to surface that information back to your sales team who can know, hey, this person was invited, they actually accepted, and they've registered for the conference. So now that they've registered for the conference, I can use that as a way to pivot off it for my sales priorities. From a lead perspective, it's always tough when you're working with sellers because they want to make sure that they've got the best leads possible. You can build a very robust lead scoring matrix and import that into the system, and it can drive the feedback from your sales team back into your marketing team. So you can say, hey, we're going to look for these specific qualities based on the behavioral data that we get that will actually be able to score our leads up or down based on timing and engagement. So you can see, for instance, whether leads, more quality leads, are coming up or down based on the marketing motions that you're putting out on a timely basis. If you've got a big push in a particular month, you can actually look and see the quality and number of leads prior to the marketing push, and then see those leads increase after the marketing push. And this is, again, one of the big benefits of having a digital approach, is being able to see in real time, hey, more leads are coming in. In the past, a marketing team might have had to say, well, more leads are coming in and they're better leads, but you just need to trust me that that's the case. Now you can actually show them raw numbers and great integrated graphics to show off those actual increased quality and number of leads. Because those customers tend to interact on multiple channels, and because Dynamics Marketing supports multiple channels, it ensures that you don't have to worry about customers only coming in via one. You can actually see all of the different information at once across multiple channels with multiple stages of marketing, and from a nurturing perspective, multiple ways. Ultimately, that's what's going to help deliver an amazing customer experience. So there is a connector component that connects up Dynamics CRM with Dynamics Marketing. Once you have that component configured, and it's not an onerous process, it probably can be done in a day. Essentially, you can grab the important items out of your CRM, things like accounts, leads, contacts, campaigns, list data. Any of those items are items that you can sync from one side to the other. And you have the ability to choose specific targeted custom fields as well to synchronize between the two systems. This information flow is in real time. So as soon as you turn on the connector and start synchronizing, if you add a new contact, if you add a new person to a list, that will be able to flow across. So you no longer have these sources of errors where people are importing and exporting large Excel workbooks to be able to provide that information. If you do need to change, if you add a field to your CRM system, for instance, or you add a new field onto a web form that someone's filling out, you can simply go into the connector, add that field, connect it back, and then immediately begin to get that information without having to go back to a consulting team to make sure that it happens. You can also set how often that information is synchronized. You can make sure that it's every 15 minutes to make sure that as soon as a qualified lead comes in as a result of a marketing campaign, a seller will be alerted to make sure that they jump on that lead. The rule of thumb that we know is accurate from personal experience is that if a customer gets a call from sales right after visiting your website, statistics show that lead can be converted up to 50% if it's within the first hour. And that's critical, within the first hour. If that waits 2 hours or 4 hours or even a day, that number drops precipitously from 50% far, far lower. And so it's critical that you get that information in real time rather than waiting. Now, from a resource management perspective, many organizations have a lot of different project items in the mix to be able to provide this. Dynamics Marketing includes its own resource management capabilities. It integrates all the channels in your environment. You don't have to have a separate application that people are going into. Every time that someone is building a leave behind, is building a Word document or a PowerPoint deck or an image that's going into a website, all of that can be integrated into it, including time tracking. And this is when you think about the budget and resource requirements, this is often the fuzziest part of marketing. People, increasingly now with digital, have the ability to report back on the return on investment. So it's very easy to see this particular campaign landed, and it cost us $30,000 for the ad time, and the end result was $3 million in sale. That's great if you generated $3 million in sales from $30,000 in advertising time, but how much time did you spend actually building the advertisement? How much time did you spend planning and preparing for that campaign? All of those steps can be included in the cost of a specific campaign so that you can say, actually, we spent about $1 million, putting this all together. Yes, the actual, advertising time was inexpensive, or the reaching out over social networks may have been inexpensive, but the time we spent as individuals making it was quite high, and maybe that 1 to 3 relationship isn't enough to justify doing that motion moving forward. So whether it's events that you're running, or web pages and landing pages that you're building, or advertisements that you're putting on TV or radio or print media, all of that can be included in the resource management page. This is ultimately what's going to allow you to get your return on marketing investment calculation, because you're able to hook all that in natively. And finally, the one thing that I want to cover is that all of this data does allow you to surface it readily with tools like Power BI to get the information out and build some great, easy reporting to make sure that that visualization is driving you to conclusions. Simply having this data in large tables is not going to allow your organization to say which campaign should we double down on and which campaign should we pull back on. But if you're using tools like Power BI, part of Excel itself, you can actually hook in directly to your dynamic system, get that data, and build a report to give you a complete picture of your spend and revenue. So let's go ahead and show off what Dynamics Marketing looks like. So I've logged into a sample demo tenancy here. I've logged in with an account that's populated with some demonstration data. This isn't all the data in the system. I'm going to go over quickly the high-level areas of Dynamics Marketing so that you can see what it's capable of doing in real life. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Dynamics Marketing is a very robust solution. You may only need 3 or 4 of the 6 areas that are in it. But it's important to note that it is capable of stepping up and doing all of this natively. So this is your Dynamics Marketing homepage. I've logged in with my particular account, and you'll notice from the very beginning that I have access to some information that's contained within here to be able to provide information about the particular item. If I want to, I can choose to customize this dashboard to meet my needs. I can choose to build some budget usage items, or I could build a map into it. I could even build some charting to give me some information about my environment. If I want to, I can actually select chart, choose which source I'm going to be able to pull from, and then actually put that into my dashboard. And you can see I have the ability to choose, what's happened today, what's happened over the last month or 3 months, and it will simply add it into the environment to be able to surface that information for me. So when I'm working through here, it lets me pull in that information. The other area that I want to show off is actually being able to provide information more granularly. Let me flip back here to my home page. So within the actual environment, once I've logged in and set up these dashboards, I can choose to interact with them if I want to. So this is for a C-level executive. They may only pop into Dynamics Marketing to see the results of their investments within that environment. I can see as a task worker, though, the types of tasks that I have to do as an end user. So this product extends all the way from the person who's designing, the Adobe Illustrator files, all the way up to the chief marketing officer or even the CFO or CEO to get intelligence. If I'm a more granular task-oriented person, I can actually surface my tasks in here to see, okay, I've been given a task to send a proposal out. I can actually, and it's due on October 3rd, I can actually dive right into this task and pull up the information that I need to be able to get it, to be able to start taking an action on. So all of this is within the system from the main page. This is the interface that allows me to start working on my tasks. I can even set particular reminders to kick off at particular times. We've all been there where we've tried to work on a marketing campaign and it's involved 10 or 20 people for different areas. Someone has to write some copy. Someone has to put in the actual images into the environment. Someone has to build the email invitation. With Dynamics Marketing, you can create tasks for all of those items, assign them to different individuals, give them reminders for the start time, and track their progress as they move through it. So beyond the homepage, let's filter into what the different areas of Dynamics marketing really are. So from the get-go, we've got 6 different areas that we can go into from a Dynamics marketing perspective. I'm not going to be covering settings during this session, but I will say that once you've set up Dynamics marketing and established it, connected it to your accounts and contacts and vendors, that's critical for being able to use the other 5 sections. So you probably will need to engage with a Microsoft partner to work on that settings configuration, as there are a number of different areas that you can go into, much like a CRM system, to being able to provide useful data. That settings area is where you set up things like your lead scoring models, build up your event templates, for instance. You can put in phone numbers and offers that you have, and you can build out the teams and staff that you work with on a regular basis. Much like the rest of Dynamics, all of this is touch enabled, so you can certainly use your keyboard and mouse to go through it, or you can actually use your regular touchscreen to be able to do that. So let's start with the projects area. So these are your standard project management and resource management needs of your marketing team. If you don't have an existing project management system in place, this can be a godsend just to implement on its own. You can actually track people's time. You can set up jobs and put milestones into the mix. So this is a very robust task and time tracking process, and you can use this to build out the capabilities of your existing marketing team. If you have another solution in place, let's say Microsoft Project, you can certainly continue to use that resource management. The big advantage of having it centralized in Dynamics Marketing is that when I set up a task to be able to provide a particular item for a particular project, I can actually look in the Dynamics Marketing site and see, oh, we're waiting on Steve to develop that email invitation, and that's what's holding up the campaign, and I need to go over there and ask him, what the delay is on that. You can also make sure that requests for projects come in to actually spin things up in real time. And Dynamics Marketing is robust enough that you can run it internally as purely a system that you use to help your marketing team, but you can also use it to service other customers. So if you're a media shop or a marketing shop that's taking requests from multiple customers, out of the box, Dynamics Marketing is set up to allow you to have specific companies that you support that need different marketing campaigns done at the same time, and you can, as a marketing firm, actually take all of those projects under your own umbrella, and importantly, you can surface to them the efficacy of their campaigns through their own web portal. So you can have people log into your system, look at the web portal, and see how well their marketing campaigns that you're running for them are working. Let's cut right into the marketing execution side of the coin. So this is the meat and potatoes of Dynamics Marketing, and probably the area that many of us as marketers are going to be using every single day. You've got the ability, of course, to set up campaigns and programs. And when you think about the difference there, it really is the difference between project management and portfolio management. If you're only running, let's say, 1 or 2 campaigns a year, you're probably just going to use the campaign functionality. If you're running 10 or 15 campaigns a year for 1 or 2 programs, you'll find the program usage very intuitive. And if you're running a variety of different programs for different customers, it'll be invaluable to make sure that you're using the programs component to make sure that all of those campaigns are kicking off, not only at the right time, but are executing from an automation perspective. I've also got the ability to build out the vendor companies and contacts that I have in this section, as well as my client companies and contacts, and even contracts. Marketing lists. These are the lists that will come over from CRM once you've synchronized it to be able to get information about the types of individuals that you're targeting. Those lists can be tied to specific companies if you're supporting multiple companies, or just to yourself if you want to. We covered how you can build up the lead scoring in the settings page, but being able to make sure that you're tracking how leads are coming into the system and when you're converting them to opportunities is the real stuff that the sales team is going to start to take advantage of as soon as you set it up. From an events perspective, events are something that many organizations that I've worked with have often struggled with getting off the ground simply because there are so many moving parts, and there are rarely great event management packages that integrate into your marketing packages. With Dynamics Marketing, event management is just viewed as another facet of marketing. I've got the ability to set up lodging, to track attendance and sponsorship. I've got the ability to track different venues and venue facilities. That's all baked into the product, including things like travel. I've also got the ability to, of course, interact with social media and spin up new email messages to go to customers, and to be able to actually look on a month-by-month basis of what are the activities that I have that people are participating in. And finally, I want to be able to get results of all the campaigns that I'm doing, which we'll cover in a minute when we look at the performance side of the coin. Now, for many of us who use various methods to construct the actual content that goes into a marketing campaign, it can be extremely frustrating to have images and copy strewn across a variety of different platforms. They could be in SharePoint, they could be in a file server, it could be on someone's desktop. Making sure that all that information is consolidated in one discrete section is one of the key strengths of Dynamics marketing. I have the ability to spin up specific advertisements and drop them into one area of Dynamics marketing. I can construct file libraries within the actual Dynamics marketing website and place images into that. You saw earlier when I showed you this items of file usage, I can see what people are uploading and downloading and what types of information, from PowerPoints to PDFs to simple JPEGs, are included in that mix. So all of that is part of that media and assets library. Finally, I can actually use a discrete ad scheduler to build out what those ads are going to look like and when they're going to go off for people to be able to take advantage of them. And I can have specific rate cards and information about the different various media outlets I work with to be able to get good numbers on what it's going to cost for me to use some of these channels to market to. That leads directly into budgeting. And from a budgeting perspective, Dynamics marketing is incredibly robust. If right now you're doing this either back of the hand or in some Excel worksheets, and you're just reporting it back to the CFO later, this alone can help you justify a Dynamics marketing implementation, because you can track very easily responses and requests. You can track how you're getting paid, POs. You can track receipts for the work that you're doing. All of those items that you associate with a traditional accounting system that are related to the marketing effort can be used in Dynamics marketing to help show you what the expenses are of any particular campaign or program that you've launched. You can even include items such as tax rates and payroll into the actual Dynamics marketing system. All of it is included in this budgeting section. Finally, one of the most important areas is reporting. So we covered how you'd build those marketing campaigns and how you'd track how much you were spending on it, and how you'd actually be able to leverage things like landing pages and responses to get conversions listed in your organization. These performance items are how you go to your C-level executives and say, this is how we're getting the return on our marketing investment. We spent $500,000, that created $8 million worth of sales, and that created 20 happy customers, and here's how we went through that process. Maybe we narrowed it down from 500 potential leads to 50 qualified leads, which resulted in 20 opportunities, which resulted in 8 sales actually closing, which is what resulted in the $8 million out of that initial spend. All of those sorts of funnels, to be able to say this is where it started and where it ended, are part of this reporting process. You've also got the ability to look at project reporting. So again, if you promised your customers or clients to be able to provide these marketing campaigns, and that could be internal usage, it could be external customers, to say how utilized are people? If we have a certain number of people and they're producing this much content on a regular basis, do we need to expand the marketing team perhaps? Or do I need to go back and say, hey, there's a bottleneck here at this particular person. What can we do to unstick it? How can we produce more effective marketing campaigns just by looking at the raw numbers? So one thing I'd like to show you before we dive into the questions is I'll walk through a sample marketing campaign and I'll actually look at what that looks like. So if I go into a particular campaign, I've got a couple here, and select any specific one, it'll bring up information about the campaign that I can use to provide to provide back to my stakeholders. And when you're setting up a campaign, frequently what you'll see is you'll build this out beforehand to be able to provide information to your organization. These are very standard items: when it starts and stops, what company is it associated with, what program is it connected to or department, how are we going to score the leads, and actually what category are we going to apply to it. And we have a number of activities. I can build out activities here to allow people to see the information contained with the campaign. I've got an activity here that a lunch and learn that's going on right now. This is all very well and good, and it's great to be able to do this. I would say the real game-changing moment for Dynamics marketing occurs when you go into the automation side of the coin. So if I flip over into automation, it'll actually bring up a list of tasks that I can perform to be able to plan this out. So this is where you would sit down with your CMO using their budget and plan out the next year's worth of activities, campaigns, and programs for them. If you're a pure marketing shop, you might be doing this on a monthly basis for various clients. If you're using this for your own internal marketing, you might be doing it once or twice a year. Once you've built it out, it is as simple as dragging and dropping items within the system. You can actually begin with something like a marketing list and an email campaign going out that drives individuals to a specific landing page. Once people go to that landing page, you can actually say, I'm going to have a trigger here, and this trigger is going to say, if they went to the landing page, perform some tasks. If they didn't go to the landing page, we're going to wait a certain amount of time to take an action on it. So each of these items, when you select it, allows you to go into the properties of that specific task and to say, hey, I'm going to wait a particular number of days. In this case, I'll say, let's wait 14 days. And then I'm going to commit that to the actual item. So each of these areas allows you to go through and start building out a campaign from scratch to be able to meet the needs that you have. I think many of us, when we're looking at multi-stage campaigns, just lack the resources or the tools to be able to execute on a campaign of this complexity. And when you think about waiting 14 days and kicking it off, that's something that any of us think that we should be able to do. But without a tool like Dynamics Marketing, it can be incredibly difficult to ensure that those emails are being sent out on a regular basis and that those tasks and activities are being performed on that basis as well. And this overall system is not a system that requires a huge amount of training to be able to work. It could be from a drag and drop perspective. I can simply go in here and put additional items within it and drag them into the mix to say, hey, after this email comes out, I'm going to drag a social media item in here. Or maybe I'm going to send some print mail to those individuals. That ability to build this out, incredibly useful to make sure that your marketing team can actually go through and make this a useful product to be able to work on. So I know we went over a little bit. I do want to open it up to you guys to ask some questions in the final 5 minutes that we have about the system and solution. It obviously is a very, I would say, a very robust product. So there's a lot of different feature sets that are capable in it. But even if you're just looking for campaign automation, I would say it's incredibly useful. If you're looking at it from a project management perspective or a media and assets perspective, also areas that you can get quick wins to make sure that it's useful at your organization. Any questions in the IM window, Jasmine?
No, we don't have any questions just yet. Does anyone have any questions before we end the webinar?
I am, of course, happy to answer questions afterwards as well. Would love to be able to do a follow-up demo of any specific features with you or your organization.
Okay, no questions so far, Reed. So thank you again to everyone who joined us, and we will be sending out a link shortly if you're interested and you missed any parts of the webinar. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.